Thank you, Scott, for your very nice introduction, but most of all for your leadership and the leadership of the Meridian Institute in really galvanizing this whole national conversation and movement around the linkage between imagination, creativity, innovation, and, as you said, creating prosperity and looking at all that we do as human beings in the context of art. So thank you very much. The Council on Competitiveness is really honored to be a partner in the National Imagination Initiative and believe that really the nexus for all of this has started here in Indiana. So you should be very, very proud of that. For me, coming from the heartland of the country, I grew up in Akron, Ohio. I have on my father's side relatives who came from Indiana, went at the turn of the century to Valparaiso, so I have lots of relationships with this state and this region. And so I look with great enthusiasm and excitement to the fact that I really believe this heartland of our country, you know, Ohio, Indiana, Illinois, Michigan, in spite of what the pundits believe, is really on the cusp of a tremendous renaissance, both in terms of what we're talking about here today, but very importantly in addressing many of the huge global challenges and opportunities that are going to be shaping the world over the next 50 years and that will, you know, determine the standard of living and security and leadership of the United States. I also just wanted to mention that, of course, I'm sorry that I didn't have the chance to say hello to Governor Daniels, and I know his schedule couldn't permit him to be here, but for whatever you think and wherever you are politically, he has really emerged as one of the innovative governors in our nation. I think if we look at what's going on across the country in terms of states' ability to invest in their future, to deal with some of the educational challenges, having a surplus and dealing with many of the economic challenges that we've faced over the last 2 years, Governor Daniels has emerged as not just a talker and theoretical person, but an innovator who has results. So you should be very, very proud of that. Also wanted to mention that, of course, many of the leading universities in Indiana are members of the Council on Competitiveness, from Notre Dame and Purdue and Indiana University. And we're also kind of excited that our former director of NSF, Arden Bement, who did so much for our country in investing in the basic research foundations, has come back to Indiana and will be leading a new institute at Purdue. What I want to do in the time we have, and if there is time, we can have some discussion. Unfortunately, I do have to leave fairly soon because Scott knows I have this tendency. I got a little overcommitted coming from Abu Dhabi, and I have to be in Orange County, but I didn't want to miss this because we're really committed at the U.S. Council on Competitiveness to what you're incubating here in Indiana. Just by way of background, I think you have this in my bio, but just again to share that the Council on Competitiveness is going into its 25th year next year. We are a unique organization in our country in that we're the only nonprofit, charity-based organization in terms of tax structure that brings together the CEOs of leading American corporations, large, small, medium, with our university presidents and labor leaders to really understand the future drivers of U.S. productivity, how we raise the standard of living for all our citizens, and how we succeed in the global marketplace. And we're very thrilled that we have new leadership in January. Our chairman is Sam Allen, the CEO and chairman of Deere Corporation, again, one of the iconic American corporations that is not only at the forefront of technological innovation and global success, using everything from the most advanced materials and supercomputing for their next generation products, but also in the lead in how manufacturing will occur in the 21st century. And again, playing a huge role in their capacities and their capabilities to deal with some of the big emerging global challenges that I will mention. So what I want to do very briefly is kind of give you a broad global overview of some of the transformational shifts that we have entered into as well as the world, and say, you know, that I kind of sometimes like to use a little alliteration, but we're in an era of tremendous turbulence, of a lot of transition and transformation. So I'm going to share just very briefly what some of these shifts are, and then bring that back down to what it means to America, what it means to our future, what it means to states, as well as what it means to the next generation. So of course, the first shift that has just been profound is the digital revolution and global network communications that now has enabled digitally empowered production networks that span the globe. And we look at wireless devices making every place a workplace, how entrepreneurs and small players can link in to this global communication that enables knowledge, capital, know-how, and talent to flow across borders as never before. And the economic activity that's flowing through the world's digital veins is only going to increase in the years ahead. The second great shift is this meteoric rise of the emerging economies, who but 20 years ago competed really on natural resources, on low-skilled commodity goods, slowly working their way up the economic development curve. That curve has been shattered. And again, pumped by this digital revolution and other factors, they really are now able to integrate fully into global networks. Just a couple metrics. In 4 years, from 2003 to 2007, developing countries increased per capita GDP by almost 30%. Between 98 and 2006, their exports doubled. And it's interesting that companies from Brazil, India, China, and Russia on the Financial Times 500 list have more than quadrupled in the period between 2006 and 2008. And it's really hard for us, I think, to grasp how fast this growth has been. So for me, just coming from United Arab Emirates, and I'm going to weave a few little thoughts in about that experience, but what we can say is that the 3,000-year-old Silk Road is bustling anew, with rapidly growing trade and investment running from Shanghai and Hong Kong and Tokyo and Seoul, Singapore to the Persian Gulf, back again to Asia and into the United States. The emerging economies are dynamic, they're volatile, they're culturally complex business and social and security frontiers. The third shift is the emergence of these globally integrated businesses. We believe really at the Council on Competitiveness there's no such thing anymore as national enterprises. We have global enterprises. They are, again, creating not only their supply chain wraps around the world, but they're building global talent networks to assemble the knowledge and the skills, the customers, the co-creation assets for their next wave of product, service creation, value creation. The number of transnational enterprises has more than doubled since the early 1990s, and their foreign affiliates have grown also exponentially. Now, these global enterprises have fundamentally changed the nature of trade. 20 years ago, trade was about moving goods physically across national borders. And this is a metric that came out of our 2006 Anniversary Competitiveness Index that's pretty powerful, and I always want to share this for people to really understand the meaning of this. This is 2006 data, and I believe it's only greater, and we're going to be getting into that over the next year to update this. But sales from foreign affiliates of U.S. companies, so U.S. companies outside the United States, are more than 3 times greater than the entire value of all exports of U.S. goods and services. So outside the United States, these enterprises are making 3 times what we export. So when the president has called for a doubling, tripling of U.S. exports, this is a phenomenal task. And we can get into this later, but quite frankly, it's not going to happen if we can't figure out where do the profits and revenues go from that 3 times the value outside the United States. Because at the end of the day, these global enterprises have the complete capacity to decide where are they going to put their high-value investment, where are they going to put their high-value jobs, and what does that ultimately mean to the United States. And I will signal that right now we have a very business-hostile environment for capturing and getting a lot of those assets, not just from U.S. enterprises, but from the whole global enterprise of non-U.S. companies here in the United States, in spite of our tremendous assets. And that really relates to a profound disadvantage we have in capital cost structure and our regulatory environment. So the other shift, the fourth shift that I'll quickly mention, is for the first time in human history, we have a global trade in tasks, and we have 24/7 global labor arbitrage. What does that mean? Well, it means that billions of people in the world have entered global commerce, and every day it's easier to ship work around the globe in bits and bytes. So Scott kind of alluded to this. If work is routine, if work is rule-based, if work can be digitized, there's going to be a low-cost source of labor somewhere in the world to compete for that work and those jobs. And you couple that to the fact that machines and automation are increasingly capable of doing those routine tasks that used to make up jobs for millions of Americans, from accountants to security guards, and that you can't compete on that basis. U.S. workers at every skill level face job competition via imports, worker immigration, offshoring, corporate global sourcing and delivering, and this rapid advance of digital machines and software. So you could say, in effect, that we are competing every day for everything with everyone around the world. The fifth shift, while economic growth and prosperity is increasingly coming from emerging economies, and of course we've seen in the global recession and the data, there's a fabulous piece I read on the plane yesterday on the Financial Times, just really showing this data that the investment and growth is really being sustained by the demand in the emerging economies and the slowdown of demand and growth in the developed world, and that, is really not good in the long term because we need both to get back in balance.